Imagine this. You're on your deathbed. Your body is frail, breath shallow, and the hospital's sterile scent lingers. Family surrounds you, faces drawn with grief, voices soft with sympathy. But all that noise fades, leaving one haunting question. Was any of it real? The life you built, decisions made, dreams chased, were they truly yours? Or were you running from something you never faced? You worked hard, planned carefully, sought approval, and built your identity by following the rules. But what if all that was just a disguise, a distraction from a deeper truth? What if your career, relationships, and morals weren't clear choices, but born of fear? Not fear of failure or pain, but a darker fear, death. This isn't just speculation. Ernest Becker, author of The Denial of Death, argued that nearly everything we do is shaped by our subconscious fear of mortality. Unlike other creatures, we know we will die, causing existential paralysis. To cope, we create immortality projects, careers, reputations, religions, not to live fully, but to distract ourselves from death. But here's the twist. These defenses trap us. Denying death lets it control us. The fear lurks beneath, shaping choices and priorities, binding us to illusions of permanence. Today, we'll explore how this fear affects daily life, how society is built on death denial, and how facing this truth may be the key to true freedom. Becker's insights are both provocative and emotional. By the end, you may see life and fear differently. In The Denial of Death, Becker reveals that most behavior isn't rational or free. It's a desperate effort to suppress the one unavoidable truth: death. Unlike animals, we're burdened with mortality awareness, creating unbearable tension. To cope, we build elaborate systems, religions, cultures, ambitions. Not because they're true, but because they create illusions of permanence. According to Becker, these immortality projects serve one purpose: to convince ourselves that we matter, that we will somehow live on, that we are not just dust waiting to return to dust. Some people dedicate themselves to achieving greatness, hoping their name will be remembered long after they're gone. Others lose themselves in religion, surrendering to the promise of an afterlife. Many find comfort in national or tribal identities, believing their loyalty to a cause larger than themselves grants them symbolic immortality. These aren't just preferences. They are existential strategies designed to numb the terror of non-existence. But there is a dark consequence to all of this. Because if your sense of meaning is built on denial, then your life becomes fragile, defensive, and rigid. You will attack anyone who threatens your beliefs. Not because they're wrong, but because they threaten the symbolic structure that shields you from fear. This is why we see so much conflict in the world. Wars between religions, culture wars between political factions, social media outrage over perceived slights. Becker would say that underneath these battles lies the same unspoken dread: the fear of death. People are not just defending ideas, they are defending the illusions that keep them sane. Now pause and ask yourself, how much of your life has been guided by this unconscious fear? The pressure to succeed, the desire to be admired, the need to be remembered? Are these truly your desires, or are they defenses? Have you ever felt a strange emptiness after achieving something you thought would bring you fulfillment? That emptiness, Becker would say, is the voice of reality breaking through, a reminder that no amount of money, fame, or validation can protect you from the truth you've been running from. The fear of death doesn't just influence our choices, it controls them. And unless we bring this fear into the light, it will quietly steer our lives in directions we never consciously chose. In the next part of this video, we will explore what it means to confront this fear head-on, and why, paradoxically, facing death may be the only way to truly start living. Becker would argue something even more unsettling: that much of what we call social life is not just conformity, but a coordinated effort to collectively deny death. From small talk at parties to the pursuit of status on social media, so much of human interaction is rooted in a subconscious attempt to distract ourselves and each other from the ultimate truth we refuse to face. We engage in rituals of success, chase validation, curate identities, and perform roles not because they bring us closer to our authentic selves, but because they shield us from existential anxiety. This is what Becker calls the vital lie, the unspoken pact society makes to pretend that life is orderly, predictable, and meaningful. But intelligent individuals, much like the philosophers and artists who have always lived on the fringes of culture, tend to see through this illusion. They sense that something is off, that the urgency people feel to be liked, to be busy, to be productive, is not driven by joy or purpose, but by fear. And so they pull away, not because they are antisocial, but because they are allergic to falsehood. In solitude, there is no one to lie to, no mask to wear, only the unfiltered presence of one's own mind, and for those capable of facing it, that solitude becomes sacred. This reframes the very nature of social interaction. For most people, it is a necessity, not in a physical sense, but a psychological one. Without others to validate them, to mirror back a sense of worth, many feel lost. They seek comfort in community, but often at the cost of individuality. Becker believed this is why people become so defensive when their beliefs are challenged, because those beliefs are the scaffolding that holds their illusion of immortality in place. To question them is to invite chaos. These systems hold our illusion of immortality in place. To question them invites chaos. But what if someone no longer needs that illusion? What if they confront death directly, strip away comforting lies, and see life as finite, fragile, and often absurd? For Becker, that's the start of true freedom. But it's not easy. It demands courage to live without guarantees, find meaning in a meaningless universe, and accept life isn't a rehearsal. Like Schopenhauer, Becker believed most people prefer comfort over truth, sacrificing authenticity for safety. Yet for those who choose awareness over denial, a different life awaits, and one of conscious choice, where solitude means liberation, not loneliness. Next, we'll explore what it means to live with this awareness and why embracing death can be the most life-affirming decision. Becker also concluded that much human behavior stems not from genuine desire, but psychological dependency. Like Schopenhauer's view of socializing as escape, Becker saw our search for meaning as a way to avoid death's terror. People fear silence, not just external silence, but the existential silence within that reveals no absolute answers or permanence. This is central to Becker's theory. Our need for validation and connection often masks a need to escape truth. We engage socially not for fulfillment, but distraction. Something to do, someone to impress, a place to be, all to avoid mortality's reality. But the aware find society hollow, conversations feel rehearsed, traditions robotic, ambitions lose urgency, leaving a yearning for truth over connection. That's why those who face death's fear often withdraw, not out of antisocial intent, but to seek deeper meaning beyond applause, groupthink, or rituals. Becker called this the hero's journey, facing mortality head-on without denial. It's a tough path, exposing you to the raw, unfiltered truth of existence once distractions fall away. But here's what makes this journey transformative. The very thing we spend our lives running from, death, becomes the key to a more authentic life. When you stop denying your impermanence, your choices begin to change. You no longer chase approval. You no longer waste time on meaningless goals. You no longer pretend. Instead, you begin to ask what really matters. What do I want to do with the time I have left? Who do I want to become, knowing that everything ends? And this shift is what connects Becker and Schopenhauer so powerfully. Both believe that true freedom begins where illusion ends, that solitude, whether physical or philosophical, is not something to fear but to embrace. It is in solitude that the mind becomes clear, the soul becomes honest, and the individual begins to live not in avoidance of death, but in alignment with it. In the next and final part of this video, we will uncover Becker's most radical idea, that death, far from being an enemy to escape, can become our greatest teacher, and that by fully confronting it, we might finally understand what it means to be alive. As a result, they often feel like outsiders in their own culture. Ernest Becker took this one step further. He argued that this outsider status isn't just a social inconvenience, but an existential consequence of awareness. The more conscious a person becomes of death, the more alienated they feel from a society built to ignore it. The intelligent person sees how much of life is posturing, rituals of success, performative optimism, forced smiles, and they can't help but feel disillusioned. To them, it's not just that conversations are shallow, it's that the entire structure of modern life is a kind of denial, a massive unspoken effort to pretend we are not dying. This creates a painful paradox. On one hand, the intelligent individual longs for connection, real, honest, soul-level connection. But on the other hand, They find that most people are so invested in their illusions, so deeply afraid of confronting the truth, that real connection becomes nearly impossible. Becker called this the tragedy of consciousness. Awareness isolates. To see clearly is to stand apart, and yet the alternative, unconscious conformity, is spiritual death. But this awareness also opens the door to something deeper. Because once a person stops expecting the world to provide meaning, they begin to create it themselves. This is the terrifying freedom that comes with accepting death. There is no script to follow, no guaranteed answers, no universal blueprint for a meaningful life. And yet, in this void, there is also potential. The potential to live authentically, to create values from within, and to forge connections not out of fear or custom, but from a place of truth. This is why Becker, like Schopenhauer, ultimately saw solitude not as an escape, but as a gateway. It is only when you stop running from silence, from death, from your own thoughts, that you begin to confront what truly matters. And while that journey may be lonely, it is also where the deepest transformation occurs. In the final part of this video, we will explore what it means to live with death, not as a looming threat, but as a guiding force, and how, by embracing our finitude, we might finally discover the courage to live without masks, without illusions, and without fear. Schopenhauer believed that the majority of human relationships are built not on love or truth, but on fear, specifically the fear of being alone with oneself. Ernest Becker echoed this sentiment through a darker, more existential lens. He argued that our relationships, our careers, even our ideologies are often psychological strategies, ways to keep the terror of death at bay. They are what he called immortality projects, symbolic structures we attach ourselves to in the hope that a part of us will live on, be remembered, or matter in the grand scheme of things. This realization forces the intelligent person to rethink not just how they relate to others, but why. Are they building relationships out of genuine alignment, or out of an unconscious desire to escape their own existential vulnerability? Becker believed that until we confront the real reason behind our actions, the fear of death, we remain trapped in a kind of psychological servitude. We perform roles, we maintain appearances, we chase meaning through others instead of confronting the ultimate solitude of being alive in a dying body. But here's the radical shift. Once a person accepts that death is inevitable, that no relationship, achievement, or social approval can shield them from it, they are finally free. Free to stop pretending, free to stop performing, free to seek relationships not as shields against fear, but as mirrors of truth. In this light, solitude is not a rejection of society, it's a crucible for clarity. And the relationships that follow, if any, are forged not from desperation, but from conscious choice. Becker's ultimate message is that facing death does not mean choosing despair. It means choosing authenticity. Only when we stop using others as tools for our immortality projects can we begin to form real, honest connections. Not all people are ready for this. Many will retreat into comfort, into noise, into the safety of social rituals. But for those who see through the illusion, there is another path, a quieter one, perhaps lonelier, but infinitely more sincere. In the final part of this video, we'll confront Becker's most transformative idea, that your fear of death is not your enemy, it's your compass. And if you are willing to follow it, it will not lead you deeper into fear, but into a life of clarity, courage, and meaning. They seek meaning, not the kind handed down by culture, but the kind wrestled from existence through reflection, creation, and truth. Ernest Becker believed that intelligent individuals are often propelled by a deeper need to confront the terrifying reality of their mortality and to carve something meaningful from it. This isn't a casual curiosity, it's an existential drive. The average person might chase status, relationships, or comfort, but the intelligent person looks past these surfaces and asks, what does it all mean if I'm going to die? This is what Becker called the heroic project, a personal mission to create significance in a world that offers none by default. But unlike society's typical goals, these projects are not about approval or applause. They are about facing the void directly and answering it with one's own voice. This is why highly intelligent people often seem detached from ordinary ambitions. They are playing a different game. They don't crave validation, they crave coherence. They don't chase popularity, they seek understanding. And this pursuit comes with a cost, Because to live authentically in the shadow of death is to walk away from many of the comforting lies that make social life easier. You will say things others find uncomfortable. You will think in ways that make you an outlier. You may often feel misunderstood, isolated, or even alienated. Not because you are broken, but because you are awake in a world that is asleep. Yet this path also leads to something extraordinary. The few connections you do make are forged in truth, not convenience. The work you pursue is aligned with your essence, not with others' expectations, and the solitude you embrace becomes a sanctuary, not a sentence. As Becker saw it, it is only when we accept the finality of life that we begin to live without illusion. And only then can we begin to love, to create, and to be free. In the final part of this video, we will explore what it means to live not in denial of death, but in partnership with it, and how the fear you've spent your life avoiding may, in the end, become your greatest teacher. And this paradox leads us directly into Ernest Becker's most unsettling insight, that the very awareness which grants us wisdom also opens the door to terror. According to Becker, the human condition is defined by a fundamental contradiction. We are symbolic creatures who can imagine eternity, yet we live in decaying bodies fated to die. This awareness, this knowledge of our mortality, is not a minor detail. It is the core of our psychology, and it infects every choice we make, whether we realize it or not. Becker argued that civilization itself is built upon a collective denial of death. Culture, religion, status, even morality, these are all structures designed to give us the illusion that life is meaningful and that we matter beyond our physical end. Intelligent individuals, however, often struggle to participate in this illusion. Their critical thinking dismantles the comforting myths that shield others from existential dread. And once the veil is lifted, it cannot be unseen. This is the real reason they distance themselves. It's not just about small talk or conformity, it's about the unspoken agreement that most people live under. Don't think too much about death, but the intelligent mind can't help it. It sees how much of human behavior is shaped by the fear of being forgotten, the fear of being irrelevant, the fear of non-existence. It sees how people chase careers, fame, relationships, not always out of joy, but to leave a mark, to scream into the void, "I was here." This insight doesn't lead to despair. In fact, for Becker and those who understood his message, it points the way toward a more courageous life. When you stop running from death, when you confront it head-on, your motivations begin to change. You no longer live to impress, you live to express. You stop conforming and you begin creating. You stop performing and you begin being. And in this shift, something extraordinary happens. You become free. In the final part of this video, we will look at what this freedom truly means and how embracing your mortality may be the only way to live authentically in a world built on denial. Not because these things bring lasting fulfillment, but because they mask a deeper, more unsettling truth: the inevitability of death. For most, this fear remains buried beneath layers of distraction, but for the intelligent, it looms large, shaping their worldview and decisions in subtle yet profound ways. Schopenhauer's philosophy reveals that true peace cannot be found in external validation or social approval, but only through mastering one's inner world. This mastery requires courage. The courage to face solitude without flinching, to embrace silence instead of noise, and to find contentment not in others' approval, but in self-understanding. It demands a rejection of superficial desires and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about existence. Only then can one rise above the endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction that traps so many. What makes this path difficult, yet transformative, is that it is deeply countercultural. Society teaches us to fear being alone, to constantly seek connection and approval as if these are the keys to survival. But Schopenhauer challenges us to reconsider. Perhaps the fear itself is the true prison, and freedom lies in embracing our solitude and the wisdom it brings. As we close this exploration, remember that the fear of death controls more of your life than you realize, not as a distant abstract idea, but as the silent driver behind your choices, your relationships, and your very sense of self. Understanding this truth is not meant to paralyze you, but to awaken you, to give you the power to live deliberately, authentically, and without illusion. In the final segment, we will uncover how embracing this reality, rather than fleeing from it, can lead to a life of profound meaning and freedom. A life where fear no longer controls your every step, but instead becomes the catalyst for your greatest growth. but as a vital space for growth, a sanctuary where the mind can explore freely without interruption or compromise. It is in this silence, away from the clamor of social expectations, that the intelligent mind begins to unravel the true nature of existence and confront the fears that others endlessly try to escape. Solitude becomes not a punishment, but a powerful tool, a way to confront the ultimate fear of death, the great unknown that silently governs every human choice. Schopenhauer believed that by embracing solitude, individuals can break free from the chains of social illusion and recognize that the fear of death is the hidden force driving much of human behavior. Most people seek comfort in distractions, status, relationships, material success, to mask this anxiety, but those who dare to face it openly begin to live with greater authenticity and purpose. This does not mean abandoning society entirely, but approaching it with clarity and intention. When free from the need for validation or escape, social interaction becomes an opportunity for genuine connection rather than a refuge from fear. The intelligent person chooses carefully, engaging only where there is depth and meaning, not simply out of habit or social pressure. Understanding this truth changes everything. It reveals why many of the world's greatest thinkers, artists, and visionaries have preferred solitude, why their lives often seem at odds with conventional social norms, and why they are sometimes misunderstood or labeled as outsiders. They are not rejecting humanity. They are seeking to understand it from a place unclouded by fear or distraction. As we conclude, ask yourself, how much of your own life is controlled by the fear of death? How often do you chase superficial validation to fill an inner emptiness? And what might happen if you, too, embrace solitude? Not as loneliness, but as the key to wisdom, freedom, and genuine fulfillment? The choice is yours, to live controlled by fear or to confront it and discover the profound peace that lies beyond external approval. Their fulfillment comes from within, a deep wellspring of self-awareness, curiosity, and purpose that no amount of social interaction can replace. This internal richness allows them to engage with the world on their own terms, rather than being shaped by the expectations of others. Schopenhauer's philosophy invites us to reconsider how we define success and happiness. Instead of measuring these by the size of our social circles or how popular we are, we should look inward and ask what truly nourishes our minds and souls. The courageous path is to embrace solitude, to develop the capacity to be alone with ourselves without discomfort, and to seek connections that enrich rather than drain us. In a world obsessed with constant connectivity, this is a revolutionary idea. It encourages us to pause, reflect, and prioritize quality over quantity in our relationships and in our lives. It reminds us that the loudest voices and busiest schedules are not necessarily signs of a meaningful life. Ultimately, the message is clear. True fulfillment comes not from escaping ourselves through social distractions, but from the disciplined cultivation of our inner world. Highly intelligent people understand this deeply, which is why they often appear detached from social life, not because they lack empathy or desire connection, but because they have found a richer, more enduring source of happiness within. So as you consider your own relationship with social life, ask yourself, are you seeking connection because you genuinely value it, or are you avoiding the silence within? And what might happen if you allowed yourself the freedom to embrace solitude, to think deeply, and to find fulfillment in your own company? This is the path to wisdom, freedom, and authentic happiness. External validation is fleeting, but true fulfillment lies in the cultivation of the self. So now, the question turns to you. What would your life look like if you embraced solitude as a strength instead of a weakness? What might change if you stop seeking approval from others and focus instead on your own growth and understanding? How much more could you achieve when you prioritize your inner world over external distractions? Perhaps the greatest minds in history were not outliers, but pioneers, trailblazers who chose the path of introspection, independence, and intellectual freedom. And maybe that very path is the one that leads to the deepest and most lasting form of fulfillment. Thank you for listening.